Vladimir, if you know him, you too will rejoice. Autumn, 968, Kiev, in the land of Rus, now Russia. The priest stood at the door to the chamber, peering anxiously down the corridor. It was deserted. Only a few servants remained in the palace, and the priest had sent them scurrying to pack supplies as soon as his messenger had arrived. Now it was time to execute the final stage of their plan. "Please, Helen," he urged, "the messenger has arrived. There isn't much time, Princess." "I'm ready." The woman brushed a lock of silver-streaked hair from her strong forehead and put comforting arms around the two boys clinging to her skirts. A third boy, smaller than the other two, stood apart from them. He glared at the priest. Like his brothers, the boy's head was shaved except for a ponytail on the left side, identifying him with his father's clan. "Her name is Olga," he said defiantly. The priest forced a tolerant smile. "Of course, Prince Vladimir. But Helen is her Christian name, the one she chose at her baptism." "Her name is Olga," insisted Vladimir, his shoulders stiffening. The woman turned to the child and put a gentle hand on his smooth head. The corners of her dark eyes crinkled in a smile. "All right," she agreed. "How can I refuse such a smart and handsome young man?" She drew the boys to her and looked up at the priest. "My grandson and my people call me Olga. You may do so as well." "As you wish," replied the priest with a nod. "But we must go now, or our messenger will have journeyed in vain." "Follow him, boys." They hurried into the corridor, following it as it curved away from the inner chambers of the palace. Vladimir elbowed his brother Yaropolk and edged closer to Olga. "You should treat our grandmother better," said Yaropolk. "Her Christian religion is ancient." Vladimir shoved him, and Yaropolk tripped. The exasperated priest scooped up the boy and kept moving. As they neared the outer court, the roar outside the gates grew louder. 4 soldiers met them in the courtyard, bowing until Olga extended her hand. "What is the situation?" "Our plan worked," said the captain. "Our messenger ran through the Peknig army with a bridle, asking if anyone had seen his horse. They thought he was one of theirs and just laughed at him. When he reached the Dnieper River, he jumped in and swam to the other side. He got the message to Prince Sviatoslav that Kiev was under siege." Olga breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank God! My son will return soon with the armies of Rus and rescue our starving city." "Yes, but we can't take any chances," said the priest. "You and the princes must leave tonight." "General Pretich will meet us at the Dnieper," said the captain. "But we have to go now while it is dark." Olga threw back her shoulders. "Lead the way." They slipped out into the darkness and followed the soldiers. The princess slowed her pace, taking Vladimir by the arm. "Anything can happen in the next few hours, Vladimir, so listen carefully to me," she said. "I have learned to know God, and am glad for it. If you know him, you too will rejoice." He scowled at her. "My father's gods are my gods." "You must hear me," his grandmother insisted. "When I was a young girl in Pskov, I heard of the great missionaries of Constantine and Methodius, and I too rejected their religion. But now that I have visited Constantinople and worshipped the Creator God in his beautiful churches, I know that I was a fool." Vladimir wrenched himself out of her grip. "I am no fool. I will reign in my father's place one day with the blessing of our gods." The tassels on his silk tunic rustled as he strode ahead of her. She squeezed her eyes shut and prayed, "O God, save him from himself." Use him to declare your glory to the people of Rus." The priest had stopped ahead of them and was anxiously waving at her to hurry. Glancing behind her at the palace's dark profile against the starless sky, she picked up her skirts and rushed to catch up with the soldiers. 20 winters passed. A well-dressed Byzantine ambassador, followed by several attendants, was escorted to a chamber deep inside the palace of Kiev. The guards did not announce him, but took up positions inside the door. 3 men were waiting for him at a table. The one in the center had a long ponytail on the left side of his otherwise shaved head. "I am Vladimir," he said. "You are Basil's messenger?" The Greek nodded. "My name is James. Sit." James took an empty place at the table. His companions remained standing behind him. Vladimir gestured to the older man seated at his left. "Dobrynya, my political adviser." Dobrynya nodded, but didn't smile. James returned the greeting warily. "And this is General Wolf's Tail, my military adviser," continued the prince. James blinked. How does a man get the name of a soulless animal? The general crossed his arms over his tattered animal hide vest and glared at him from half-lowered eyelids. Vladimir grinned. "Those who meet him in battle understand." Wolf's Tail growled suddenly in amusement and bared his teeth. Startled, James dropped his gaze to the rough-hewn tabletop. He noticed, below it, a thick rug covering the floor with a dark pattern of interlocking squares. "Satisfy my curiosity, Greek," said Vladimir. "Why did Basil send you all the way from Constantinople? Is he afraid I will conquer his city? Perhaps he wants to surrender now." James stared at the prince, unsure of his response. He couldn't imagine the Byzantine emperor receiving a visiting dignitary in such a manner. Vladimir broke into a deep belly laugh, echoed by Dobryana. Wolf's Tail didn't flinch. "I'm not serious, of course," said Vladimir, leaning across the table. "Just having a little fun at your expense." James offered a tentative smile. The prince frowned back. "You are here with a message, aren't you? I want to know why Constantinople sends messengers all the way to Kiev."
"Of course," stammered James. "I assure you, Prince, the Emperor prefers to be your friend, not your ruler." "A preference I'm inclined to indulge. Emperor Basil seeks a partnership." Vladimir leaned back on his bench and stretched his neck until it cracked. The sound was startling in the quiet chamber. James placed his hand on the table in front of him. "Since your brother Yaropolk's mysterious death, you have been sole ruler of Rus. You have expanded your father's territories far beyond their original borders, and you have restored the worship of your ancestors, even convincing your people to sacrifice their children in the flames. You are obviously a very powerful man. None of this is news to me, Greek. What's your point?" "Bardus Phocas in Anatolia is marching on Constantinople even as we speak. Emperor Basil believes Phocas is a threat to us and to you." Wolf's Tail snorted. "To you, not to us." "Perhaps not yet," retorted James, avoiding the general's hostile gaze and speaking directly to Vladimir. "But eventually Phocas will become a menace to Kiev as well. Before that happens, Emperor Basil appeals to you to help your friends in Constantinople. What's in it for me? Demanded the prince. Stability in the region, for one. Enlarging your territory has spread your power thin. Your recent struggle to control the Bulgars proves that. If you conquer any more cities, you will run out of men and supplies to defend yourself. Vladimir shifted uncomfortably. The Greek was right. He would not be able to maintain his power for long without an alliance with Constantinople, but he was not about to admit such a weakness. He shrugged. What else? As a token of his appreciation, Emperor Basil offers his sister to become your wife. Ha! Barked Wolf's Tail. She has donkey ears or a pig snout. Basil can find no one else willing to take her. James raised his chin and glared at the general with blazing eyes. Princess Anna is of the highest royal standards. She was raised in purple with her brother and is beloved of the empire. No man fortunate to have seen her would say such a thing. Vladimir laughed and bowed mockingly. You must forgive Wolf's Tail. He is a barbarian with no appreciation for beauty. James frowned and said nothing. With care, he took a small package from one of the attendants behind him and placed it in the middle of the table. Vladimir snatched it and unwrapped the fabric covering. It was a miniature portrait of a woman with large eyes and shining hair curled around a delicate face. He smiled and tucked the portrait into his vest. I'm listening. A marriage to the princess would offer strong political ties, not only with Constantinople, but with all of our allies, said James. He made a face as though his words tasted bitter. Dobrynya spoke for the first time. It is well known that the Greeks do not allow their women to marry foreigners. That is nearly true, admitted James, but not quite. It is not foreigners that we object to, but their pagan religions. Christians do not marry pagans. He turned to the prince. If you wish to marry Princess Anna, you must first accept Christianity. Of course! Vladimir threw up his hands and leaned back again, shifting his gaze to the ceiling. There is no escaping the religion of my grandmother, he thought. Every day he remembered the night they had escaped from the besieged Kiev, and how beautiful and earnest she had looked as she urged him to turn to Christianity. He loved her fiercely, but her approval was not worth rejecting the ancient gods and jeopardizing his power. Vladimir's voice was low. The guards will provide whatever you need. You will be notified of my decision. James was happy to leave them, his companions following in his hasty footsteps. You can't forsake our gods, grunted Wolf's Tail. They give us protection and prosperity. Wolf's Tail is wise in military matters, but not politics, said Dobrynya. Our nation is strong, but it could be stronger with the Emperor's sister as your wife. Surely the gods wish that. The general glowered at the old man. He already has more wives than I can count on one hand. Vladimir grinned. Is it my fault that there are so many beautiful women in my kingdom? Wolf's Tail spat on the floor. The Greek princess is more than just another wife, said Dobrynya. Her presence here creates a permanent bond between our peoples. She ensures a profitable alliance. Only if he abandons our ancient religions for this ridiculous Greek myth. It's too high a price for one more specimen in his collection. Wolf's Tail spat again. Dobrynya turned away in disgust. Vladimir, Christianity is the religion of your grandmother. She was no fool. and plenty of others in Kiev followed her beliefs after she spoke of her visit to Constantinople. We must accept the fact that the religions of Rus have put us at a political disadvantage in our relations with the Greeks. It is time to accept or to change that. The prince rose and began to pace, his back to his advisers. Over the last few years, he said, our borders have expanded rapidly. The Muslims have tried to convince me to accept their religion. The Khazars sent Jewish teachers. The Latin Christians in Germany sent their priests. And now the Greeks. Everyone wants Rus to forsake the old gods. Dobrynya spoke quietly but firmly. My prince, our religion is a thing of the past. We must consider our future. Of course, I'm thinking about our future. I sent our people to Constantinople to see what the Greeks were talking about. And they were impressed, reminded Dobrynya. Remember what they said? They didn't know if they were in heaven or on earth, because the churches were so beautiful. They were convinced that God dwells there. Vladimir ran a hand over his smooth head. So be it, he said. An alliance is good for our future, and another woman is good for me. I will agree to Basil's proposal. The general pounded the table with his fist. The gods of Rus, enough, shouted Vladimir. I have made my decision, and you, general, will lead the army. With a growl, Wolfstail smashed his stool against the wall and stomped out. With the assistance of Vladimir's army, Basil successfully defeated Phocas's advance. All of Kiev celebrated as Wolfstail and his men returned, but Vladimir was furious to discover that Princess Anna was not with them. Where is she? He demanded when the general arrived with his report. I told you the Greeks could not be trusted. Basil refuses to keep his end of our agreement. The general handed him a letter marked with Basil's imperial seal. She does not wish to leave her people. It is not her decision. Obviously, Basil is weak and allows a woman to dictate to him. Vladimir flung the letter to the ground and crushed it under his boots. If Basil will not give me his sister, then I will take another prize. Prepare to attack the city of Cherson. Why Cherson? Why not? It is a valuable port city close to my territory, and the Greeks have controlled it for far too long. I will show Basil what happens when he betrays the great prince of Kiev. Following the custom of his father, he sent a messenger ahead to warn them of his approach. Tell them if they refuse to surrender, I will lay siege to the city until they starve. Vladimir took shifts manning the oars with his men as they sailed down the Dnieper. They halted on the harbor side of the city. Begin constructing earthworks, ordered the prince. Anyone who tries to get in or out of the city will have to climb the mountains, making himself an excellent target for our archers. No food or supplies will make it through. Cherson will fall in a matter of days, declared Wolfstail. You have only enough time to sacrifice to the gods. Send a message to Constantinople, replied Vladimir. Tell Basil if he will not give me the princess, I will take his precious city. And if he continues to refuse, I will take Constantinople too. The prince worked alongside his army. Within days, they had constructed a tall mound of dirt around the perimeter of the city. I am too old for this digging, grumbled Wolfstail, rubbing his sore shoulders as they prepared to sleep on the sixth night. But the barrier is now complete. He nodded toward the north, where a line of flickering torches reassured him that Vladimir's watchful archers were at their posts. Now we wait for them to surrender. The prince stretched out on a blanket with his saddle under his head and was soon snoring confidently. The early morning light revealed a strange gap in the earthworks. "What is this?" demanded Vladimir. "I don't know," said the general. "The men were at their posts all night and saw no one, but somehow the soil was removed. Where is the missing dirt?" "We can't find it, sir. It's just gone." "Find it," ordered the prince. The men filled in the missing section of the earthworks. Vladimir himself stood watch that night, but all was quiet. In the morning, the soil in another location was gone. Vladimir and Wolfstail rode north to a hilly area overlooking the city. "What's your theory?" asked the prince. "Do we have a ghost? Or do the citizens of Cherson have a god of dirt?" The general grunted. "A new god to add to the hillside at Kiev." Vladimir squinted at the city and frowned. "Do you see that, just inside the wall near the church? I don't remember seeing a hill there." Wolfstail shaded his eyes. "That is our earthworks. They're carting the dirt into the city at night. By creating gaps in the barriers, they can slip out for supplies without being seen." "Clever. There must be holes in the city walls, because we know that the gates are sealed." "Inspect the walls," ordered Vladimir. "Post guards at the openings, just outside of a bowshot. Now that we know where to look, we'll keep them from getting out." The earthworks were untouched that night. "It worked," declared the general, "but they still refuse to surrender. When they're hungry enough, they'll surrender. We'll wait." Weeks passed. There was no reply from Basil, and Cherson showed no signs of surrender. It was a hot afternoon, and Vladimir stood in the shade of a tree on the hillside with several of his men. "Why haven't they run out of water yet?" "I can answer that," called Wolfstail, riding up on his horse. He had an arrow in his left hand and a crumpled message in his right. "What is this?" The arrow was shot over the city wall with the message attached. It claims to be from a man inside the city named Anastasius. Apparently he wants to end the siege. "Finally, a traitor! If he survives the attack, reward him." Their water supply is no longer a secret. The note details the position of pipes running underground from a spring into the city. That's how they have withstood our siege for so long. "Cut off the water," ordered Vladimir. "Now." They soon found the natural spring in a rocky area north of the city. Cool water bubbled up in a series of connecting pools, nearly hidden by ferns and shrubs flourishing in the moist soil. "Dig," the general shouted at his men. "The pipes are under here somewhere." They dug until the sun went down. Wolfstail sent for torches and ordered the men to keep digging. "I've got something," came a shout. Vladimir snatched up a torch and followed the general. One of the men stood in a hole, slowly filling with water. "I think I cracked the pipe." "Destroy it," shouted Vladimir. As soon as the people of Cherson discovered their water was gone, they surrendered. Vladimir and his men marched into the hungry city. "Send word to Constantinople," said the prince. "Tell Basil I have captured his glorious city, and I am going to do the same to Constantinople if he does not deliver the princess." Wolftail nodded. "And then get these people some food." "Sir, I didn't come to destroy their city. I just came for my bride." They found a comfortable house to inhabit while the general's messengers made their way to Constantinople. A ship arrived a week later with a reply from the emperor. "Anna has agreed to marry you," declared the messenger, "if you will be baptized and promote Christianity in Rus." "Basil is still making demands," cried Wolfstail. "We'll take his capital anyway." Vladimir shook his head. "It will take a substantial force to capture Constantinople. The troops in Kiev would be depleted, and my enemies will take advantage of the opportunity." "I won't take orders from a Greek." Vladimir swung around. "You'll take orders from me. Dobriana is right. we need this alliance. The cost of such an alliance is too high. You're willing to forsake the gods of Kiev for a woman? The prince shrugged. If she brings her god to Kiev, he can look out for us. He better. Once you reject the gods of our forefathers, our people will be left unprotected. He'll have the assistance of my army, he softened. The Christian God was good enough for my grandmother. What does a woman know about religion? He shot Wolftail a warning look. She was a wise ruler, even if she was a woman. No one will speak ill of her. She was always at peace, even when she was surrounded by war, he remembered. She had insisted that he would rejoice if he met her God. Kiev and Constantinople shall become brothers, Vladimir declared. Ah, what a comfort to Constantinople, said Wolftail. Hopefully Basil has forgotten that you ordered her brother Yaropolk's assassination and took his wife. You speak too freely, General. Wolftail grunted, but said no more. Deliver a message to Basil, said the prince. Tell him, I have learned about your religion from my grandmother. If it will bring Kiev and Constantinople closer as allies, I will be baptized as a Christian. The general hesitated. Go, Vladimir barked, and tell him I'm waiting for my wife. Vladimir was baptized in Cherson. After his marriage to Anna, he returned the city to Basil as a groom's gift. Though he appeared to have converted to Christianity for purely political reasons, history records that Vladimir took his vows seriously. He tore down the idols of Kiev, founded churches throughout Rus, and built schools to teach his people how to read the Bible. When Vladimir died in 1015, his kingdom was divided among his 3 sons. Following his father's example, Svyatopolk murdered his brothers Boris and Gleb and seized their territories. But Christianity had taken root in Rus and became the dominant religion of the next 10 centuries.